I think that the vice president's happy to go anywhere and any place to talk to a broad segment of the country. We talked with Rogan and his team about the podcast. Unfortunately, it isn't going to work out right now because of the scheduling of this period of the campaign. But, she's taking her message to these huge platform audiences, even like Club Shay Shay, like you just talked about. She was able to sit down with Shannon Sharp today. And so she's happy to go into these places and share her message. And I think that it's reaching people who aren't really invested in the political process. Donald Trump with Joe Rogan, that's going to be an interesting thing to watch.
Interesting indeed. Things are heating up here in Texas, and I'm not just referring to the fact that we are still hitting 90 degrees in late October. But today, Donald Trump is over in Austin recording an episode for Joe Rogan's podcast. Now, he prefers podcasts to actual news outlets these days, but maybe that's all for the better. His voters and his supporters aren't exactly watching 60 Minutes, but they are listening to Joe Rogan. And a recent poll from Echelon Insights basically confirms this. The poll found that amongst fans of the Joe Rogan Experience, Trump is winning by 35 points. However, despite the overlap in audiences, Trump and Rogan haven't always been on great terms. In the past, Joe Rogan has said that he had reservations about having Trump on his show. He said that he wasn't a Trump supporter and that having Trump on his podcast could potentially help to rehabilitate Trump's image, something that Rogan didn't necessarily want to be a part of. But however or whyever it happened, that interview happened earlier today, and the episode is supposed to be made available to the public very soon, likely tomorrow. So here are some more interesting findings from Echelon. Take a look at this. They looked at men with specific interests that could be considered to be more right-wing, and they found that among people who follow Elon Musk on X, Trump is leading by 51 points. Among fans of Barstool Sports and Dave Portnoy, its owner, Trump is up by 18 points. And among fans of right-leaning comedians like Shane Gillis and Theo Von, for example, Trump is up by 15 points. But then they looked at the difference between white and non-white men, and the results got a little bit more interesting. Take a look at this. Among non-white fans of Joe Rogan, the UFC, cryptocurrency, or Barstool Sports, Trump has a 6-point lead compared to a 23-point lead amongst white men. But among people with none of those interests, Harris leads with non-white men by 71 points. Trump leads by just 1 point amongst white men with none of those interests. So, Cenk, what do you make of these results, especially in light of the fact that Trump did go on Joe Rogan's podcast today? We obviously don't know what happened on that podcast yet, but what do you think is going to come from it?
Yeah, I want to talk about whether that was a good idea and whether Kamala Harris avoiding it was a good idea or not. But I wanted to point out one other fact in there that was amazing. So I'm not that interested in white, non-white, et cetera, in that regard. But the stunning one to me was, so, Yaz just read you guys a bunch of stuff, the Rogan, Theo Von, and Shane Gillis, UFC trading, cryptocurrency trading, pro wrestling. So, but that's not that big a category. You saw it in that first chart. So all those folks Trump's winning with, but when you take that out, Kamala Harris with everyone else in America is leading by 26. So to me, one of the things that says is, Trump is winning social media in a big, big way. And Kamala Harris, has she done a social media interview? She probably has, but I mean, it was probably
Did she do the call your daddy?
Oh podcast? Yeah, she did that podcast. That's kind of social media, right? So like, they just did mainstream media, but mainstream media is already on your side. The viewers are pretty much on your side. And so I don't think they understand that social media, digital media even quite exists. They're like, oh, no, we'll get some TikTokers to say nice things about us, we'll pay them, et cetera. But that's not anywhere near enough. But okay, back to Rogan. Look, if it's the beginning of the campaign, what I would say to them is, both of them, my advice would be, definitely do it. What are you gonna do? Like, do you think you should be president? If you think you should be president, go make that case. Go make that case on Rogan, go make that case on MSNBC, go make that case on Fox News, go make that case everywhere, and don't stop making your own case. Get all the free media you can. Now, here we are about 10 days out from the election. That's a little bit different calculus. Whoever is leading at this point, since it's so late, probably shouldn't do the interview, especially because Rogan can ask questions that are unconventional. So like if Kamala Harris goes on CNN, you know what range of questions they're gonna have, and she's already got her talking points ready for that. But Rogan might give her a question that does not compute for talking points. On the other hand, Trump currently, it looks like he's got a slight lead, and Rogan is one of the places he could blow it. Because look, this is what I've said all along, and this poll shows it, that Rogan's audience is mainly right wing. Like he gets super upset when people say that. But brother, these are facts now. I mean, you can complain about it, but that's just what it is. It's not necessarily because Rogan's so right wing. It's just that like 8 out of 10 of his guests are massively right wing. So then he eventually wound up having just a right wing audience, or at least a plus 35 right wing. But even so, Trump is so crazy and he juggles hand grenades for a living. So in a context where it's less controlled and Rogan is more independent because he doesn't need to kiss Trump's ass, he doesn't need the interview, etc. You can ask him a couple of questions that Trump could really bungle. Can Trump say anything crazy enough that it would hurt him? Because he's already said every crazy thing in the world. Maybe if I was leading and I was Trump, I don't think I'd do the Rogan interview. But and at this point, Kamala Harris, is she really going to win over the Rogan crowd? That'd be super tough. In the beginning, I would have said definitely do it. At this point, I'm not sure she should do it. So, but when Trump does it and Kamala doesn't, then that again shows strength for Trump, and I don't like that look either. So as you can tell, it's a complicated calculus. So Mondale, what do you think?
I think it's a different calculus. I think she jumped in 4 months before the election. I don't think there would have ever been a time that she should have prioritized Joe Rogan. Rogan is a troll to people that she need to win an election, and like you said, and like the polls show, the survey showed, most of his fans were never going to vote for her or not going to vote for her anyway, for a long list of reasons, and one of them is that she is who she is. I think we should also mention that she did All the Smoke, which is a podcast that is about black men from black men. That is extremely important, and it got overshadowed by Obama's stupid mistake when he was talking at black men instead of talking to black men or listening to black men. But she was doing it. That was a wonderful podcast that has a huge reach in our community, especially for the brothers that she need to reach. And I think here's the difference. I think this is a concept of the new media, and what I mean by that is like we're deciding what podcasts or what social media outlets you need to be on. We're making tough decisions. She went to the Shade Room. Like I said, she went to All the Smoke. She talked to Charlamagne the God, who I don't agree with on most things. So I think she's owing or nodding to those folk that she needs to reach to expand her electorate in a way that seems realistic. It is unrealistic to be spending time in these days when everything you should be net in votes to be on Jeff Rogan. I don't think there's no net over there. You could definitely lose votes by going and wasting time there when you could be talking to spaces and to people that are more likely to, if they heard your message or heard from you, more likely to vote from you than you would over there. So my calculus is this is a great move by not going on Joe Rogan, and also remembering that I think people were pushing her at the beginning when she first got in, saying she was not doing enough media. Now they're saying she's doing too much mainstream media and not enough social media. I think she's doing exactly what she needs to be doing as it pertains to how she's showing up in media spaces, mainly because as it pertains to black men, the most skeptical bunch in America's electorate, I would say, she's tapping right. She has some surrogates that are problematic, like D.L. Hewlett, like Barack Obama, but herself, she's doing exactly what she needs to be doing when she says she needs to earn their vote, when she puts out plans and when she shows up on the Shade Room, and also a Shay Club, Shay, and what's the last one I said? Oh, All the Smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna make a quick aside here. When Obama made those comments to black men, first person I thought it was Mondale, because Mondale was saying at the DNC to us, like, don't go talk down to black men and get and blame them for things and assume things about them instead. And so when I saw Obama doing that, I was like, no, Mondale was right. Don't do that. Don't do that. So that was my side. Yes.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Mondale on this one too. I think that it makes sense to me that she didn't go on the Joe Rogan Experience. Keep in mind, we are what do we say, 10 days out from the election? That's crazy. There's very limited time left. And she came into this election with only a few months to campaign. So she had to be really, really selective on what kinds of appearances she was making, who she decided to talk to, when and where, all that type of thing. She had to have a much more pointed campaign, a much more deliberate campaign. Donald Trump has been campaigning for the last 10 years. He said everything that he's going to say. He said everything and then some, and he's still in this race, and the race is still so tight. He's going on Joe Rogan. I think he thought that, I would imagine that he thought that Joe Rogan would be a bit of a softball for him, even though, him and Joe Rogan haven't always gotten along in the past. They've had their own issues. But I think as far as winning over a demographic, that's an easy landing for him, because a lot of the people that he already appeals to already think he's awesome, already back up everything that he says. And, he's just going to go do more of that on Joe Rogan. So he has been picking very comfortable venues to go and speak to the people. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris did do the Fox News interview. So that I do commend her for doing that. I think it makes sense that she would have to do that. But these days, things are so partisan that just the fact that she went on Fox News felt like kind of a groundbreaking moment in the election. And I do think it did help her to reach some different people who never really heard her speak directly from her own mouth. So I think maybe I'm being a little optimistic here, but I do think it did help to just expand her reach a little bit beyond where it originally was. But on that note, speaking of Kamala Harris, this is what she did do today. She was here in Houston. She did a rally. She had a special guest, Beyonce, and that was a big deal. Beyonce is, she was expected to make an appearance at some point during the election. In true Beyonce fashion, she did wait until the last minute to get politically involved. She has done this before, but Harris has been using her songs at the rallies for months now, so it makes sense that she's here. Also, I do want to point out to people who might not realize this, but Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the country. Consistently, no matter how you cut it, politically, culturally, socioeconomically, all kinds of ways, right? So I think the fact that she did choose to come to Houston and address the people, I think that was a really good move on her part. Cenk, I know we have to go to break soon, but do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, so I don't think Beyonce is going to make any difference.
Really not, no.
Yeah, but I will say, look, overall, I think we should be glad that Trump's going on Rogan, because if we're right that he's slightly leading at this point, that's a rare place where he can make a mistake that could cost him, especially because it'll be amplified because it was on Rogan and everybody's paying attention to that. The only other thing that could help is, Israel is considering bombing Iran this weekend. And if they had done it earlier, maybe it helps Trump. But now, if they do it now, maybe it hurts Trump. So there's a couple of wild cards left, and I don't know that he's slightly leading. It is so hard to tell based on the polls, but it does look that way. That's my best guess. So any opportunity for Trump to make a mistake is an opportunity we should look forward to. That's my last.
Cenk and Yasmin, can I say something about this? So listen, not about the polls, right? But about what we are seeing in those people who've already voted, and not to get killed by the producers. But let me make this point real quick. What we know about the Republicans in a lot of the spaces that have already turned out to vote early, these are super voters, right? So Republicans are banking voters that are going to vote anyway earlier than they normally would. Normally, these people would have waited until election day. So Trump is out loud talking about the insecurities associated with mail-in ballots, but he's secretly at people's door and in their mailbox telling them to go vote early. What we're seeing from Democrats, though, are people that are less super voters, so they're more sporadic or low information, what the world call non-voters. And that's a benefit for Democrats, because if you're banking this early, already non-voters or sporadic voters, and your super voters are still yet to come, then this race is not as close as we're making it. And I think we should acknowledge that not all early voters are the same. And if we're not truly looking at the data, then we're not comparing apples to apples.
So Mondo, you think Kamala's going to win?
I hate being a predictor. I think she wins. I think she wins just simply because what I'm seeing in Pennsylvania, what I'm seeing in Georgia, what I'm seeing in some other states. I don't know. I think she holds the states that Biden won. And I think that's enough to beat Trump, as we already seen it happen before.
Yeah, the data is all over the place. So hard to tell. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.